book today. I know that's really embarrassing. Today, please, everybody, open your book you knew when you were 2 to chapter 2, page 6. So just bear with me for a second. I'm just going to reference a point I make in it because we've been talking about it in class this past week. And it's this concept of wabi-sabi. And if you don't know what wabi-sabi means, it's a Japanese philosophy where you find the reverence and the sacredness, the sanctity in things that are broken or old. And I think that's really important to remember, especially here in America, because it's a youth-driven culture, and especially if you're in the entertainment business or in Hollywood, because by the time you're 22, you're too old. So we definitely have a very perverted, disconnected relationship with aging. And so the whole obvious idea about wabi-sabi is to embrace things that we eventually want to discard, and that there is beauty in kind of the ancient and the stuff that we would normally define as broken. And there's an example of that. So anybody who lives in Hollywood, keep in mind, we all have to move to Japan. No, I'm just kidding. Like, I think it's really important to find reverence and sacredness in things that we think are no longer usable, right? And so that's a metaphor, but there is an actual extension of this in practical terms in Japan called Kintsugi. And Kintsugi is the art of taking something that was broken and then illuminating or highlighting the broken parts. So with Kintsugi, like, let's say I don't have a cup here. Let's say I had a porcelain cup of tea, or fine china, or something that broke. And then instead of throwing it away because it's broken, you kintsugi the pieces together, and you don't try to hide the cracks. So I just have a rock here, so that's not going to work. But if I broke that rock, I would try to glue it back together using lacquer and silver applique, and you're basically trying to beautify the brokenness, right? And to not hide it, to instead use it in a way to bring out the scars, to bring out and embellish and show the parts that are broken, that in of themselves can create a new way of understanding art. And I don't know if I was writing this book based on that theme, because it was, to me, it seems to be a theme of life itself, that we want to hide and are embarrassed or have shame around the parts that we think are broken or unusable, the things in ourselves that we feel singularly we possess that make us, unworthy, unlovable, not capable, untalented, which in truth are the very things that we need in order to make our art interesting and unique and wholly yours. So I had come across this interview in the BBC a couple of years ago, and I actually did a lesson about this, but I just thought it was very timely to come back to it. There was a woman named Isabella Santamaria, and she had, I think, a car accident, from what I had remembered, and when she was younger, and she had part of her face was disfigured and had a scar because of the accident. And for the longest time, she talked about when she would look in the mirror, she would sort of disconnect from the image that was being reflected back to her. She would not actually she would see the scar, but she would disassociate from it, right? So it was something to hide. There was shame. It was something to sort of avoid at all costs if you can, even though it is on her face, right? And then she had, I think, a transformational experience where she started to see that instead of having shame around these things that we've been taught are unlovable or are ugly or the scars of our own experience, to embrace it, and in this case, highlight and illuminate it. So she kintsugi'd her own scar. So she basically made it even more prevalent and pronounced. And then I think she went out in public and lived her life with that kind of living testimony to what she had overcome. And the scars of her life were illuminated in a way to show, hey, broken doesn't mean discarded. Broken means this beautiful offering of my total self, including the broken, shattered, displaced pieces. And so I think as a metaphor, it's a really beautiful reminder that we need all of you, including the parts that you feel make you not okay. It's really about transferring our pain into purpose, making your broken heart into great art. And I just wanted to go back and read this little chapter here. I just want to read this last part. I was dropped on my head. Well, it wasn't dropped on my head. My sister like threw me down in a laundry chute. So it kind of became the inspiration for this philosophy. So I just want to read this last part. So I'm glad my sister dropped me on my head, or rather pushed me so that I plummeted 10 feet below and went splat. Somewhere in all that rubble must be the broken parts, which, when assembled, become something whole again. Putting them together so it all makes sense is the work. Scrambled doesn't mean lost. Broken doesn't mean irreparable. The cracks have formed scar tissue that tell their own kind of story, and we all have one or many to tell. Okay, kids, keep on keeping on.